Hi you guys, so when I got these braids in, I did not contemplate the fact that I was going to have such a hard time finding hair ties in my house that can fit the braids. So if I want to put it in like a bun up top, if I want to do half up, half down, if I want to do these space buns, I'm having a hard time. I have tons of these. Everyone has these little rubber bands. They work good, but not for braids. Even with me stretching it out all the way, it is not gonna fit the bun, or it's gonna break by the time I stretch it out. So let's make some cute ones that will not damage your hair, will not damage the braids. Let me show you how to make them. So you want to head over to your fabric store, and I found this poly satin fabric that I wanted to use. You want to choose something that's going to be good for your hair and not damage it. So here I'm just figuring out exactly what size I want, and these are the colors I chose to go with. You also are going to need some small elastic. So I chose this braided polyester blend of elastic. Also choose the corresponding thread colors. So for the size fabric that you're going to choose, I ended up going with 1/4 yard of the purple and the pink, and then 1/2 yard of the black so I can make 2 of them. As far as supplies, you're going to need some scissors. These are optional, but these are kind of jagged sawtooth edge scissors that you can use for fraying fabric. Your fabric color choices, the braided elastic, and then you will just need the corresponding thread colors to match the fabric you chose. Now, for dimensions, we are going to have it be on the fold. On the fold means it is folded over on one side, and on the opposite side, you have your open edges. So we're going to do 60 inches total and then 30 inches wide. So while it's folded, it's going to be 30 inches that we're cutting and that we're working with by 7.5 inches. So this purple piece that we're working with is directly cut from the counter. This is our 1/4 yard. And to know that you're working with the right side and sewing the right sides together, you'll see that one side is shiny and one side is dull. So we want to put those two shiny sides together. And then this is your raw edge. And this corner here is considered your folded edge. Once you have those right sides put together, we're going to straighten it out, and then we're going to measure for exactly how big we need it to be. So now let's get our tape measure. And from the folded edge to the raw edge, we want it to be about 30 inches. This fabric cut in general was 30 inches. I measured it in the store, so I knew I didn't have to cut that. So what we end up having to cut is the 7.5 inches. So I'm going to take a ruler, and then I'm going to mark off 7.5 inches and cut that excess fabric off. So I'm just using this Sharpie to make small dots along so I know exactly where to cut it. Nothing too crazy because you don't want it to bleed through. There are fabric markers you can use, which is what I would recommend, but I just happened to grab this Sharpie that I had close by. Once you've got it all measured, you're going to cut along those lines. You can keep or get rid of that excess fabric. We are not going to need it. So you see these edges are frayed when you cut straight across with regular scissors. This is where these jagged edge scissors will come in handy. So I am going to cut down all along where I just cut, because this is going to prevent your fabric from fraying. This is 100% optional. I'm just choosing to do this all the way down. So now we're going to create some notches. So you want to make sure you have the raw edges. You're going to measure 2 inches from the raw edge side and make a mark. 2 inches from that mark, you're going to make another mark, and repeat the same thing on the opposite corner. Notches are used in patterns to help you know where to line something up, as well as where to start and stop sewing something. So you're going to just cut little triangles right where you made those little marks on both sides. Once you're done making those notches, we're ready to take it over to the sewing machine to get started. So with our shiny sides together, we're going to fold it hot dog wise, making sure we're lining up our notches, and we're going to pin along all the way down. So we are going to sew that one corner, leaving in between those two pins unsewed, and then we're going to continue sewing down. Giving us enough seam allowance, we're just going to do a straight stitch on this small 2-inch section before we hit that first pin. You're going to sew that and then cut your threads. Once we have those threads cut and trimmed, we are going to move on to the next section, and we're going to sew down, giving us enough seam allowance on the side so that we're not too close to the edge. Straight stitch, no need to go too fast on this. You want to make sure that your stitch is nice and straight. So just continue all the way down. Once you're done sewing, it's time for us to turn it right side out now. So you're just going to use your hands to kind of push the opposite end through the other side. And then once it gets to a certain point, you're able to completely pull it through. Now you want to be looking at the shiny side now and not the dull side. That's the right side. So here's where it can get a little bit tricky. You have this opening here, which is what we want. And you're going to take one end and pull it through that hole that we created earlier. So while you're doing this and straightening it out, you want to make sure you're not twisting the fabric too much because it will create unnecessary loops in your fabric. Once you have that all straightened out, you're going to end up grabbing the opposite end of the fabric, and without twisting it again, you're going to pull that through that same gap that we left earlier. You're going to line up those seams and make sure that the seam of the one end is connected to the seam of the opposite end. That is going to give you one continuous loop that we're going to sew together. So here I'm just pinning it so that when I take it over to the machine, I know that the seams are lined up exactly where they need to be and I'm not accidentally stitching it closed fully. You want to make sure you're taking your time pinning this accurately because you don't want your seams to be misaligned. Once you're satisfied with how it's pinned, you can take it over to the machine and very slowly and carefully, you're going to stitch around that circle of where you just pinned. Once you're finished stitching that, you're going to just double check and make sure it's sewn all the way around, and you're going to flip it right sides out, and now you have your seams aligned and it is one perfect circle. So now we have to turn this into a scrunchie. So let's take our elastic and we're going to measure 10 inches, and then you're going to snip off at 10 inches, and that is going to be what we insert into this little hole. You can use a safety pin, but I'm using these sewing clips that I have, and you're going to feed one end of the elastic into the fabric in that gap that we created earlier, and you are going to do that until you're able to pull it through the opposite side. Remove the clips, and then you're going to tie the elastic. I ended up tying it like 4 or 5 times until I was comfortable enough and felt that it was snug and not going to become unraveled inside of the scrunchie. Once you're satisfied with how much you've tied it, you're going to snip off that excess, and then the last part is to close that little gap of where we inserted the elastic. So we're going to place those sides together, and then we're going to sew very close to the edge so that that gap is no longer open. And now your scrunchie is complete. You guys, how cute are these? I love these so much. I wanted every single color, but I decided to go with the colors that I wear the most. Here's the black in my hair, and then here's the pink. The options are endless. Show me if you guys create these. I'd love to see the combos you come up with. Okay, love you, bye.